for a band called Title Fight. Who knows what comes next? This is a new song. It's for all the people I love, and especially those I hate.
We had done Shed and Floor Green really quick back-to-back, and that kind of also coincided with the beginning of a really hectic and consistent touring schedule. We started the band super young, and we were still really young at that point. Even though we were still really young and excited, and we were happy to be out on the road and happy to be playing, we were getting a little burnout, I feel like, just from being so consistently away. So we didn't want to rush into anything. We didn't want to make another record just to make another record, to fulfill whatever kind of arbitrary album cycle kind of was pushed on bands. And so we were just kind of slowly working towards another record, knowing that we were going to do another record, knowing that we wanted to do not something different, but we just wanted to continue on the path that we were on. That took us to about 2013, 2014 of working on new songs, practicing, starting to demo here and there, also kind of starting to figure out the logistics of what a new record would be like. We were dropped by Side One Dummy really shortly after we put out Floral Green. So we were free agents, we were figuring out a new label, and we were starting to just get like all our ducks in a row. That was, summer of 2014, I believe. And it was just like, even though we had all the time in the world, it felt like we were unprepared still. And we went in to make the record. We had the longest amount of time we ever had to make a record. We had the most amount of stuff, but we had also the most amount of loose ends to tie up. Went into the last 2 albums and all the EPs like really prepared. And this time we were really trying to use the studio space in like a more, I don't know, kind of rock and roll sense of experimentation and feeling things out and trying new things and just trying to exhaust all options, what kind of started what Hyperview became. And even though, that is like already getting into the recording process, it felt like it wasn't fully realized until we were like packing up and leaving. It was a record that took the longest to form for sure.
Jamie, Ben, Shane, I'm Edward Basil. This is Hyperview Day 1. Thanks for coming out. This is the first time playing these songs. Thanks.
it's hard to say because it equally wasn't our concern to write the same record twice as much as it equally wasn't our concern to do something vastly different. There was no like predetermined idea of what the record was going to be anytime we went into the studio or anytime we sat down to write songs. I have a memory of us trying to have a conversation about like what the kind of sonic goals were going to be, but like those were never realized. You know, like we threw out some references and we threw out some things, but looking back on that conversation, like we didn't follow through on that at all. The songs kind of just like had their own identity, and we allowed them to have that, I think. Discussing whatever kind of sonic evolution is that I'd like music to be a representation of where a person or a group of people are at any given time. I think being burnt out on touring and just being in kind of a different space in all of our lives and being slightly more mature and grown up, whatever that means, definitely had a big influence on the way the songs came out. It wasn't, again, a conscious thing, and it wasn't, okay, we're 2 years older now, we have to write a mature record and use, like, mature as a way to mean slower, or, like, a record with more reverb or something. I don't particularly agree with those definitions of mature or evolved or anything, but I think that there were elements of our, like, songs in the past that had those kind of things, and when we were writing songs, those kind of moments became exciting to us. It just became something that we were naturally working towards, and I really don't know why that is. You know, it's just, those are the songs that we were liking at the time. I can hypothesize about, like, what in our subconscious was leading us towards that, but I really don't have any idea. You know, it was just those are the songs that we wrote that we liked. You know, that's really, like, as simple as I can make it. Figured out in real time in the studio for the record, and one of those things was album name and album art. So we were talking about doing something different for the artwork just because we wanted to, I guess. Really, I can't remember a specific reason. There were references to certain things like Elliott Smith, but having a physical, concrete place that people could go visit and feel attached to. But at the same time, it's like a little more tongue-in-cheek than that because, you know, we don't have that kind of ego, and we didn't have that kind of, like, big-headedness about us that we thought that we were that important that people are going to travel to Wilkesboro, of all places, to go, like, look at a wall. But it was just this idea, like, it would be really cool to leave a mark on the place that we're from. And obviously the first person that we contacted was John Slaby, who has done the artwork for all of our records since The Last Thing You Forget, and asked if he would be down, and Shane and him brainstormed about ways to make a mural actually happen and be interesting and involve some interesting elements. And then we started talking to people about where we could place it, and we did one mural on, like, a church in in Wilkes-Barre as a backup, and that was kind of testing some of the elements that we had. Because basically what Shane and John did were they made this this reflective material like by hand that became like the background for the mural. Their kind of idea was to do like a simple geometric thing, I guess just a reflective background on it, so that at night it would kind of take on a life of its own, you know? And so we did one at this church, and it was kind of small, but it was the only thing that we could get permission for. And then we had contacted this building right on South Main Street in Wilkes-Barre that was, I think it was a dentist's office, and asked if we could do a mural on the side of the building. If my memory serves me, I think we wanted that one to be the location all along, but they just took so long to get back to us. So we did the one on the church as a backup. They finally got back to us, and we did the one on South Main Street, and then got the album cover photo taken while we were in the studio right at the end of it. I don't know, it turned out cool. One of the things that's most important to me about it is that it's literally across the street from the venue that we played our first show at, and a venue that we continue to play shows at until it closed down. I think it's important because it's like a marker for Title Fight, yeah, but it's like, this is an important intersection of Wilkes-Barre underground music, you know, for everybody, not just for us. Yeah, it was just a lot of weird logistical things to figure out, but something that came together, and hopefully will be around, you know, for a little bit. And if it goes away, that's fine too. It's kind of like, who knows if it will be? Who knows if it will be defaced? I like to think that that's like a letting go of the ego in a certain way, because it's like, we put it out there, but we're not going to police it. And, you know, and we still don't. Like, somebody threw like a dead bird on it once, and somehow that fell out. But it's like, I'm not going to personally take any measures to stop like whatever natural things happen to it. To me, that's like what life is, and like what music is. It's like an attempt towards something that is impossible. And we put that there, and people can interact with it, find their own meaning from it if they would like to, and if they don't, they could just look at it, and hopefully they like the way it looks, and if not, you know, they don't have to drive down that street anyways. That was like a good marker for the band at that era, for sure.
Just called European is mine now.
Change, and that's kind of like the point of it. I mean, it's not almost a cliche. It is a cliche, but it's like a record is supposed to be some sort of scrapbook. There are things that I wanted to do then that I don't want to do anymore. And it could be something as simple as like a vocal phrasing. Like I sang a part different than I'd sing it now. I sang a note down when I'd go up instead. I wish the bass tone was like a little bassier, like something like that. Those kind of things always happen to me. But it's like recognizing all that, like, no, like the record should be the way it is. The writing process was different because we finished so much stuff up in the studio. We basically had however many songs done, only a few of them with vocals, and then we kind of just like split it up in the studio and kind of just like divvied out songs. And the songs that I picked and finished ended up not really fitting the vibe, and the songs that Jamie kind of picked was more appropriate to the mood of the record, I guess. And we kind of overrode a little bit. Somebody has said at one point that the songs that we picked really changed the mood of the record, and we had a couple different options of what the mood could have been, and we kind of scrapped those songs and went with what Hyperview became. And I think people thought that we wrote like Floral Green 2.0, but that's not really the case. Like, we only overwrote by like 2 or 3 songs, and those songs weren't that that different. They're like a little bit closer to spring songs or something, but it's just slightly off from what the rest of the songs were. And the songs that maybe were closely aligned to Flow Green didn't even get lyrics that never. And they were like on the cutting room floor from the beginning. I don't think I've ever been taken aback by reaction. It's definitely something that we knew was different going into it. And I think the biggest marker was maybe like playing shows and seeing the reactions that certain songs get, but that's also always a really complicated thing because in my experience it takes like a year or maybe even 2 years before people actually seem to know the songs from a record. It just takes a long time for people to digest, probably even longer now. You know, we put out the record, some people are upset, but some people are always upset. That's nothing new to us. Like, people are upset when we did Shed, and people were upset when we did Floral Green. And so the fact that some people are saying like, oh, I was expecting something different is nothing new to us. I think as the dust has settled, it kind of seems like that is maybe the most controversial record to people, and like, that's fine, I don't really care. I think the people that needed to hear it have heard it, and I hope that they continue to hear it. And if other people want something else, that's totally fine too, and I'm sure they can find that elsewhere. And I don't mean that as like an attack on anybody, but it's just like, that's the record that we wrote at that time, and I stand by that. I think the limitations of any medium or genre can be really amazing and can cause people to do really cool things with really limited options. Hardcore, as it's perceived as like an aggressive, distorted, fast genre, has written interesting and like good songs for close to 4 decades now in a very simple, small formula. That being said, I think not being confined to those things just for the sake of being confined to them can also be equally empowering. It's really complicated because I think both things are valid. I like traditional hardcore still, and I like new bands that are traditionally hardcore still. I also like bands that do weird things. It's like, it doesn't need to be a binary. It doesn't need to be this thing that you are hardcore if you do X and you're not if you do Y. For me personally, I think even though like I abide and don't abide by those rules equally, I think change isn't something that should be at the forefront of anything. It's inevitable, and it's something that comes across, and hopefully it should come across naturally in whatever you do as like a human being. You know, like you're going to grow and you're going to change, and maybe like musical taste and musical output isn't something that is as objective as that, but hopefully like you should be, if you are a creator or even if you're just a listener, like those kind of things should be driven by some kind of weird idealism that means something to you. But if that change means making a song faster, then follow that. And if that means something completely different to you, then I think you should follow that too. It's this weird, very personal, like ambiguous kind of idea, and maybe like impossible to define, but it's still something that I think is important. It's weird. It feels like very natural, and it feels like very scary and vulnerable at the same time. And sometimes that makes sense, and sometimes it doesn't to me. But I think people are going to continue to push it and to push back. Both of those things are going to further whatever community it exists in.
Next, what's that in front?